This is why one of the great scholars of Islam, he mentions, Imam Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali radiyallahu anhu, he mentions that one of the great scholars of Islam was asked to embark upon a particular action. One of the great scholars of Islam was asked to embark upon a particular action. And the person who is asking him, the Shaykh said to him, hang on, wait. And the Shaykh stopped for a few moments and then returned back to this person and said, now I can do it. He said, I was bringing about ikhlas for this particular deed and making my intention present for this particular deed, that I am doing it merely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is that clear? And we have Surah Al-Ikhlas in the Quran Al-Kareem. What is Surah Al-Ikhlas in the Quran Al-Kareem? Surah Qul Huwallahu Ahad. The Surah of Qul Huwallahu Ahad is the Surah of sincerity. Why? Because it's speaking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's speaking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And sincerity is that we do all of our actions for no other reason except for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is that clear? That is an internal matter. I'm going to stand and pray so everyone watches me. MashaAllah, look at him, he prays. He prays 5 times a day and he prays so many nawafil, right? People can do this outwardly to show others. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He can see what is outwardly and what is inward. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can see that which is out and that which is in. We cannot hide anything from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is that clear? Just to mention a beautiful contention of Shaykh Abdul Hakim Murad here, he says that some people put on the imam on their heads. Some people put on the imam on their heads thinking that they can hide their thoughts from God. He said some people put their imam on their head thinking that they can hide their thoughts from God. Right? This is a lid and Allah can't see beyond it. Right? So, again, that's a translation of this verse. قُلْ إِن تُخْفُوا مَا فِي صُدُورِكُمْ. Say that which you hide within your chest. أَوْ تُبْدُوهُ, or you make it apparent. يَعْلَمُهُ اللَّهُ. Allah knows of all of it. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is that clear? And something important that Imam Al-Zahabi radiyallahu anhu mentions in his Siyar A'lam al-Nubala, in the biography of one of the scholars. One of the scholars, he said that suddenly it crossed my mind that I was studying not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Suddenly it crossed my mind that, I've got so much knowledge now. I've read so many books. I've been around to so many teachers. And people are telling towards me, they're studying from me, they're learning from me. He said, suddenly I thought, why am I doing all of this? Why am I doing all of this? And I realized that the shaitan had corrupted my intention. I realized that the shaitan had corrupted my intention. And ihbar niyyah, the presence of my intention, which was originally for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, had now disappeared from my mind. So what do I do? Imam Al-Zahabi, he writes a comment on that. He said, studying and seeking this knowledge is difficult, and the shaitan will attack from all angles. If a student finds that his niyyah has become distant, or his niyyah has turned towards other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he should make tawbah and rectify his niyyah and continue. Make tawbah, rectify his niyyah and continue. For what does the shaitan want from us? Shaitan wants from us, you memorize the Quran just because people are going to say you are hafiz of the Quran. Right? Give it up, because you will have no reward. Then a person thinks, yeah, I'm doing this, so people say you have to the Quran. I might as well give it up because I'm doing it for other than Allah's sake. He said, don't give up. He said, make tawbah and turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Make tawbah and rectify your niyyah and continue in your path. Is that clear? Make tawbah, rectify your niyyah and continue in your path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's narrated in the biography of Imam al-Nawawi, radiyallahu anhu, the compiler of this work, that one day he was sitting teaching a dars. One day he was sitting teaching a dars, delivering a lesson. And suddenly he closed his books and he stood up. And he said, أُخِذْنَا مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا نَدْرِي. He closed his books, he stood up and he moved away. The students said, what's happened to the teacher? What's happened to this great Imam? And Imam Al-Ridawi said to them, أُخِذْنَا مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا نَدْرِي. He said, I have been struck from a place that I didn't realize. I've been struck in a manner that I didn't catch and I didn't realize up until now. And he packed up and he went away and he moved away. What was that? He said, I felt that my intention had become for other than the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he moved away from that. Up until the time when he revised his intention and then he came back to the dars. So look at how difficult it is to have a correct intention present when the likes of this great Imam, this great Gnostic, friend of Allah, a person upon whose wilayah, a person upon whose friendship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no one in this entire ummah has ever had a dispute. Imam Al-Nawawi was that Imam that no one from his time till our time has ever disputed that Imam Abu Zakariya Yahya bin Sharafuddin Al-Nawawi radiallahu anhu was a wali from the awliya Allah. No one has ever disputed this. And what does he say? He said, أُخِذْنَا مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا نَدْرِي. We've been taken from ways that we didn't comprehend, we didn't grasp. Someone like Imam Al-Nawawi is saying that, then we have to strive even harder to have correct intentions present in everything that we do. Why did I come into the masjid? Why am I going home? Why am I living with my family? Why am I smiling at the children? Why am I speaking to so-and-so like this? Everything has to have a niyyah for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when every deed has a niyyah for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's when we will realize our Islam to be living. Our Islam will be alive. But so long as our intentions are buried away in our hearts and they don't become present when we embark upon deeds, that's when we get bored in our prayer. Why do we get bored in our namaz? Time after time, we think, you know, I'm tired now. Why? Because our intention is not present. Imagine we stand for prayer and we say, Lillah, for the sake of Allah I'm standing. Right? And that word, Lillah, is with us when we recite the Quran, when we make our ruku', when we make sajda. Throughout our prayer, I'm doing this for Allah's sake. Solely for His sake, for no one else. Right? That's when we have sensation in our prayer. Likewise in our fasting. Likewise in reciting the Quran. Likewise in coming to the masjid. Likewise giving salam to someone. Why are you giving him salam? For the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Why are you being good towards him? For the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why are you giving him a present? For the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why are you eating? Why are you sleeping? Right? Why are you going out to earn? Everything for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We met one of the awliya radiallahu anhu, and he said something really beautiful. He said, I'm extremely ill. Physically, he was extremely ill. He said, now I'm extremely ill, but when I had some strength in me, he said, I would grow beautiful flowers in my front garden. What did he say? I would grow beautiful flowers in my front garden for no other reason except that when the passers-by walk past, they see a pleasant sight. They see a pleasant sight which brings happiness and joy to their hearts. He said, I didn't do it for any other reason except to please the hearts of those who are passing by and take the happiness and pleasure of their hearts. Because when someone is happy with something, they'll say, MashaAllah, Allah reward the person who did this. Right? So when we do things, we should think far, we should think vast, we should think into the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and make intentions for everyone and everything. Something very beautiful that we find in the Sadat of Yemen is that when they make intentions, they say something really beautiful. They say, we make this intention, we make this intention, we make this intention. And they say, oh Allah, and we make every intention that every Which means what? Which means every intention that could have been possibly that deed, or every intention that anyone would have ever made in embarking upon that deed, they would have a reward for that also. Right? And this is an analogy taken from a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which will come later on in Riyadh al-Salihin. One companion came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah, you've taught us so many du'as, I've lost count. You've taught us so many du'as, I've lost count. Du'a here, du'a there, du'a here, du'a there. So many, I've lost count. What do I do? And the Prophet ﷺ told him something very beautiful. He said, because he saw him sincere, he saw him, he really wants to make these du'as, but there's so many, and he can't remember all of them. And the Prophet ﷺ taught him something very beautiful. He said to him, for you, say this. Say, Allahumma inni as'aluka min khayri ma sa'alaka minhu 'abduka wa nabiyyuka Muhammadun sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma inni أعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذك منه عبدك ونبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأنت المستعان وعليك البلاغ ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. He said, you make this dua and you will have the reward of all of those du'as that are countless. And what is this dua? Oh Allah, I seek from you the best of that which Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam sought from. And I seek refuge in you from the most evil of what Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam sought refuge in you from. So every dua that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made is in this dua. Every protection that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sought in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in this dua. So if you make this one dua, it's as if you have made each and every dua of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you will take the reward of that also. So when we make intention, we should say, oh Allah, I'm intending X, Y, and Z, this and this, in embarking upon this deed, and I also intend every intention that's possible in this, and I intend every good intention that anyone has ever made for this project. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless that person with the blessings that descended upon those righteous people in embarking upon those actions. So when we recite the Quran al-Kareem, we say, I'm reciting this for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake. I'm reciting the Quran to learn, to take knowledge. I'm reciting the Quran because it's an act of worship. I'm reciting the Quran to grow close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I'm reciting the Quran for every intention that the Prophet ﷺ recited the Quran for. Which means what? Then we would have placed ourselves under the great, magnificent intentions of the Prophet ﷺ. And Allah will never deprive our people who make intentions like the intentions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And if our intentions are included and folded under the intentions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then what did the Prophet say? إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. If your intentions are so weighty, if your intentions are so magnificent, then imagine the gravity, the volume, the power, the magnificence of the deeds that will come after them. Imagine that. They'll just be great, they'll be magnificent, they'll be beautiful. Is that clear? So the Imam radiallahu anhu is saying, Bab al-Ikhlas, the chapter of sincerity. And sincerity is a secret. If I tell you a secret, I'll come to your ear and say it in your ear, isn't that right? If you tell the person next to you a secret, you'll go tell them where there is no one else between you and them. Ikhlas is a secret between the servant and the Creator. No one else hears it, no one else knows of it. Right? We stand up in prayer and people see us pray. We stand up in prayer and people see us praying. Isn't that right? But does anyone see our sincerity? Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees it. Why? Because it's a secret. And when we have a secret with someone, that means we have an intimate relationship with them. We have a close, intimate relationship with them that no one is allergic to, that no one has access to. It's private. Ikhlas is private. It cannot be made public. وَإِحْضَارِ النِّيَّةِ, and making the intention present. So when we eat, when we drink, when we sleep, when we move around, when we read, when we study, when we work, when we come to the masjid, we go from the masjid, to have an intention present, because the presence of a good intention will beautify, will magnify, will purify the actions that come thereafter. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this secret of ikhlas that He granted the prophets and messengers, and granted the righteous of this ummah, that He grants us the secrets of ikhlas, Ya Rabbil Alameen, and that He makes this secret between us and Him such that from it comes much good in deeds, in behavior, in character, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Oh Allah, we ask You that You allow us to keep our intentions present in each and every action that we do, in each and every movement that we make, each and every word that we utter, in each and every deed that we do. Oh Allah, allow us to keep our intentions present in our minds, in our hearts, for no other reason except Your sake, Ya Rabbil Alameen, wa Ya